There's an article from The Hill called No Trump, No Vote, Where Will MAGA Purists Go in 2028 by Douglas McKinnon. It can certainly be argued that hate and passion played an oversized role in motivating Americans to vote in the last three presidential elections. Out of the approximately 77 million votes President Trump got in November of 2024, tens of millions were pure MAGA voters. That means they were not voting for any particular policy so much as they were voting for one man, Trump. Like it or not, like him or not, Trump truly is a once-in-a-century personality. He has that elusive it factor that can't be faked, imitated, or bought. You either have it or you don't. Trump has it in spades, and he's come into the last three elections with tens of millions of guaranteed votes in his back pocket. But folded within that reality is a potentially huge problem for the Republicans come 2028. A large percentage of those voters either have not voted in years or had never voted at all. They came out to vote for one reason and one reason only: their passion for and belief in Trump. Knowing that, the very serious question for the Republican Party to contemplate is, how many of those millions of Trump-only voters will stay home once Trump is no longer a candidate? The love and passion MAGA has for Trump is truly a remarkable phenomenon. It is real and it is deep. When Trump is finally off the national political stage, there is no doubt that a percentage of that vote is going to stay home. Perhaps a few million will decide that it's no Trump, no vote. That sounds like exceedingly good news for the Democratic Party. Some Democrats might think that presidential elections often come down to a few 100,000 votes spread across a handful of states. It's kind of true. With millions of Republican votes instantly taken off the map, they may think they can't lose, but they can actually quite easily, because the Democratic Party is going to have to deal with a potentially greater millions of votes taken off the map problem than the Republicans. Here's why. It can also be credibly argued that in the last three presidential elections of 2016, 2020, and 2024, Trump was also their own voters' main motivating factor. There was much less passion for Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris than there were for pure, unadulterated, unhinged hatred of Trump. I have been in and around politics for decades, and I have never experienced anything close to it. Even within my greater circle of family and friends, such hatred has reared its ugly head. It is ending friendships and leading Trump-hating family members to cut ties with family members who don't see it the same way. Occasionally, I have found the chance to ask Trump haters which policies of Trump's are causing such a visceral reaction. In one case, I received a blank stare in response, then a few seconds of silence before the answer. I just hate him. I hate him. I can say for sure that in my sampling of friends and family, all of who voted, it's supposed to be all of whom, voted for Clinton, Biden, and Harris were really voting against Trump, and in many cases without knowing much or anything about his or his Democratic opponent's policies. That in turn raises the obvious and most critical important political question of this election cycle. As with the pure MAGA vote likely to stay home in 2028, how many of those hate Trump voters will also stay home once Trump is off the political stage for good? Should that prove to be a reality, maybe the Democrats will be the ones with a voter motivation problem in 2028. Only time will tell. I like this article because it's true. There are a lot of people who have a just blinding, seething rage for Trump to the point where they will vote for any Democrat. I mean, remember, vote blue no matter who. And, you know, on some surface level, I understand, right? They see him as, and I don't ever call him this, but they see him as a fascist. They see him as someone who's going to destroy the U.S. And they think that whoever the Democrat is, they can't be any worse than him. But is that really a motivating enough factor to be able to win presidential elections? Because once Trump is gone, and he will be after, now that this cycle has concluded, what will be the line of attack against Vance? Oh, he's going to continue what Trump did? And if Vance or, Carlson, Cruz, whoever the 2028 Republican nominee is not able to tap into those MAGA voters, because even if Trump gives an endorsement, we know for a fact it doesn't move the needle. Like, it doesn't stop someone from just not supporting that person. We talked about during the 2022 midterm, a lot of the Trump endorsed candidates were losing. So it's clear that even if whoever the Republican nominee is able to get Trump's endorsement, it still might cause a lot of his voters to not come out. And the Democrats, I don't know, it's like this article is interesting because it's so even-handed. Like on the one hand, it says Republicans need to figure out what they're going to do to keep up, to get a, if not a personality similar to Trump, someone who has an actual fan base, which is something that I think Tucker Carlson has. And it also tells Democrats, hey, this whole hoping that people will vote for you because you're not as bad as the other guy thing is not working. You need to actually have positions that people support, which is something that people like Bernie Sanders have been saying for years. But I have to say, the part where they mention, people losing family members or not like talking to each other over Trump is just, that's really sad, because I've said this before, I never want to get to a point where members of my family or even people that I talk to casually can feel like they can't speak to me anymore, or they don't want to talk to me anymore because they know I'm going to lash out at them for supporting a candidate I don't like or wouldn't support. I don't ever want to get to that point. In terms of, because again, this is the main thing I like to discuss, talk about. I find it all interesting. And I think it is very important, but just, I feel like you do more harm than good if because like everyone who votes for Trump is not a Trump loyalist. There are people who voted for him in 2016. They came to regret it. There are people who voted for him, this last time around that are, eating their words. So if you cut off dialogue with the ones who were just, maybe they were facing a lot of economic anxiety, a word that Mark Levin doesn't believe in, or term he doesn't believe in, and they, said, hey, we can't let the Democrats stay in the White House if they're going to govern like this. Let's try the other side. And now, almost a full year into his term, they're realizing the mistake they made. It's not constructive to push them out and go, nah, you're awful. You voted for someone I didn't like. Get out of here. That's, I don't think that's helpful to our cause. I think the most productive thing you can do is take this Trump supporting relative, and I've had a really small number, and hear out why they're voting for him or why they supported him. And again, if his tenure is as bad as we say it will be, he will lose them. I had a relative who was the only person in my family that I was, in close contact with that didn't vote for him, but certainly was like more open to him than the rest of my family. And by the time his first term was over, they were cursing his name. They said that he lost the election because he was downplaying the virus, saying all types of stupid stuff. And again, that's an example where if Trump is as bad as we say he is, we don't need to ostracize the people who may have voted for him out of a true desire to just get some policy change, but instead have an open dialogue, let them see I wouldn't even say the fruits of his labor, more so the spoils of his term, and then, that's a more constructive way to go about getting some change. As it pertains to the Democrats, they need to run on things people actually want. When's the last time you saw a Democrat talk about how people couldn't afford to live somewhere, or how people, you never see them talk about any economic issues, almost ever. Certainly in any direct, matter to where they're like, hey, we need to have universal health care, or free college, or hey, how about let's actually make it to where you don't have to have a job to get basic things, like food. It's, just stuff that people are clearly concerned about, and with individuals in positions of power within the government, they have some ability to affect change on. But they're controlled by their donors, and they'll do whatever the rich people say, and as long as these problems are not the issues of wealthy people, then it's not going to be something that the top feels like they need to cater to the bottom, which is how they view themselves. So it's a good article. It really shows you that both sides kind of play into, like, they've both have benefited from Trump being around. I don't care what the Democratic politicians say, they get a lot of fundraising off of people despising Trump. And once he's gone, they're going to have to actually have some real positions, or they'll just have to lose elections from now on. And it's, again, I'm not saying this is some Republican. I can't stand them either, but you need to, if you're the opposition party, you need to actually have your own plan as an alternative to whatever the other guy's is. So we'll see what happens.